You've probably seen all this stuff before, so if you're bored of seeing it, unlucky. No excuse to get all the questions wrong. These talks have been given before, so I'm sure you've all seen this before. So structure of bone. This is just an absolute classic for the exam. So it's one of those topics that if you can just smash it home, it makes you look good, and if you can't smash it home, it makes you look really bad. So knowing this well is a great thing. And I'm just going to start with kind of macro structure and work my way down to micro, but it kind of dots around a little bit. The first one is types of bone. So this is the first area of like confusion that happens. What are the two types of bone?
Cortical and cancellous.
Okay, cortical and cancellous bone. So macro-wise, you've got cortical and cancellous. Absolutely right. What's the difference like? If you look down the microscope between those two, what would be the difference?
The cortical bone is arranged in perversion canals with a central mass.
Yeah. Keep going. All the clues are there. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Whereas the cancellous bone has a very different trabeculate microstructure.
Okay. Right, it's made up of trabeculae, not scaffolding poles.
Right.
Yep, it's like a honeycomb rather than scaffolding poles. All right, great, lovely. But then, if you look down an electron microscope, you've then got lamellar and woven bone. Another two types of bone. What are the two types of bone, boy? And you go, cancellous and no. What's the, another two types of bone? What's going on here? Okay, so have you got any woven bone inside you?
Yes, if I've got a knee fracture.
Okay, so you stubbed your toe recently. Yep. Really badly, like whacked it, like proper, like you might have a bit of woven bone there. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Anything else? The reason you might have woven bone inside you?
You can lay down in there going antiphysis.
Okay, well that's right. If you're like if you've regressed by 20 years, okay, so you're a child. Anyone else? Any other reason you might have some woven bone inside you? You might have a bit of cancer. Yeah, might have a bit of osteo. Yep. Any other reason? We'll come to it in a minute. Okay, so lamellar bone. Lamella just means it's in layers, right? It means layered bone. So basically, lamella is organised bone. You're saying mature, and I guess that's right. Kids are not made up of woven bone, though. The woven bone is only at one very specific spot. Woven bone is not, I wouldn't call it immature bone, because you're making it sound as though, like when you grow up to be like me, then you get lamellar bone. Lamellar bone is in layers, it's organised bone. Yeah, bump. Now it might be arranged in tubes, layered tubes, like that, like some concentric circles, bang, lamellar bone, because it's in layers which are like tubes, or it could be layered as in the trabeculae. If you chop one of those trabeculae in half and look down the microscope, you see it's in layers. Layer. Not tubes, layers. So how does it do that? How does the body... Look at this, fucking amazing this. How does the body do that? Look, it's amazing. It's just fucking... I've never ceased to be amazed by how amazing that is. Like, how does the body do that? It is quite amazing, isn't it? You've got each one, it's got these little concentric circles, and a blood go up in the middle, and then you've got another one, they're all perfectly layered. And if you look at each one, look at the collagen fibres on this one go that way, and these ones go that way. It's amazing. How does it happen? How the fuck does that happen?
I don't know.
It's like magic, right? How on earth does the body make that? Because you started off as one cell, and then it ended up with that. I mean, the kidney's pretty cool as well, but I think bone's pretty cool. It's up there with like nephrons and stuff, I'd say. Let's see, how does it happen? Is it magic?
It's genetic. they differentiate the pluripotent mesenchymal stem
No,
cells.
come on. How does it do it? What are the mechanics of making, how does the body build that circular tube?
So it's laid out in layers over time. The osteon is made up of layers, so the osteoblasts, they keep laying down matrix, and then they get entrapped in it, and,
Right.
and new
So
ones
you
lay
talked
down.
about an osteon. What's an osteon?
Osteon is it can be regarded as a functional, a structural unit. It is that one.
But how do you make an osteon? If I said to you, I gave you an osteoblast and osteoclast, and I think, oh, make me an osteon, how would you do it?
So we have a central canal with an artery, and osteus and concentric layers of laminae.
What comes down? I know what the structure is, but how do you make it then? Not what's it made up of, how do you make it? How does the body make it? Help me out here, someone. What's the thing that has to happen first? What's this bad boy here? What am I looking at here? Cutting cone, right? The first thing to happen is a cutting cone. Yeah? So the osteoclast, big, I think we've got like 5 of them here, but you've got an osteoclast, a big ass osteoclast. Features of an osteoclast. Like, okay, osteoclast is about from here to here, right? That's your osteoclast. How big is an osteoblast? That size of you. Yeah, so you're the size of an osteoblast. Osteoclast, massive. You've got how many nuclei? Osteoclast has got loads of them, right? He's from a macrophage lineage, isn't he? He's like he's pretending like he's a macrophage, but actually he's an osteoclast. And you're what lineage are you from? Osteoblasts. Mesenchymal, like mesenchymal stem cells, yeah? Osteos is one of those guys. Okay, so, massive osteoblast, boring his way, like this, yeah? Like the bride going down the aisle, with a massive meringue on, right? Massive frock, and behind her, behind the massive bride, is, bear in mind this is in 3 dimensions, so she's boring a tunnel. Not like the hole is like this, yeah? So she's boring out this fucking great tunnel. Behind her are the little page boys holding the frock. There you are, there you are, one of those, right? And as they come down, the thing about osteoblasts is they love a surface, a bare surface. Like a bare surface of bone, they're like, oh, lovely. And they run down the side of it. They like us. They can't just exist in nothing, in stroma. They have to sit on a surface. Okay? So osteoblasts love a surface, and when they get one, they spread out over it. And as soon as they spread out over it, as long as the chemicals are right, in other words, the cytokines, etc., are correct, they will lay down. What do they secrete? Osteoid. Yes. What's osteoid? Osteoid is like a matrix, isn't it? It's basically collagen matrix. Yeah? So they lay down osteoid, which is like a gungy goo, full of type 1 collagen. Okay? They then put out calcium, or hydroxyapatite if you like, and that goes into the osteoid and mineralizes it. Yeah? So you end up with osteoid, which is gooey, and then it goes hard as it gets mineralized. And now you've got bone. Okay? So, massive hole, small osteoblast comes down, and the osteoblast comes down as a layer, they come down as a sheet, woof, down this side, all down this side, on the inside of the tube. They let down the osteoid, that gets mineralized. Then the next lot of osteoblasts come inside them, because they see a bare surface now, because these guys have covered themselves up, right? These guys come in over the top of those guys, and they lay down osteoid, and they then mineralize it, and then those guys come in on top of them, and those guys come in on top of them, and so this whole big circle is glunk, 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 as layer upon layer of osteoblasts come in and lay down concentric circles inside each one until they get to the middle where there is a blood vessel coming down. Yeah? That's how you make an osteon. Osteoclast and concentric layers of osteoblasts coming in, working their way down towards the middle. How do you make a trabeculum or a trabeculum? Or how do these remodel? Same two cells. Go on, hit me.
Stress.
Sorry?
Weight bearing stress.
Oh bollocks! Come on! I was just talking about fucking osteons and like digging out holes and stuff. We talked about a cutting cone. Was the thing that was the thing that we were the tool, if you like, for the last one. What's the tool here? Hauschips Lacuni. Okay. An osteon is like a tunnel boring machine. Brrr, circular tunnel makes a circular osteon, like a scaffolding pole. Yeah. Trabeculae can't do that. They don't have osteons. They have. It's just layer upon layer upon layer down here. So what it does is in the trabeculae instead you have, it's like a digger, like a road digger. Comes in, blah, takes a massive hole out of the floor. So now you've got your pavement here and a massive fucking hole in the middle of it. A massive hole in the ground. Massive hole in the ground. What osteoblasts love? They love a surface. There's now a massive bare surface. What do? They go down into the bottom of the hole. What do? Then they cover themselves in osteoid. They then mineralise it. So they're now covered up. Next lot of osteoblasts come on top. Underneath. What do? Cover themselves in osteoid. Next one comes in. Next one comes in. Next one comes in. Until we've got a lovely flat road. And if you were to then cut through that section and look at it online, it will be beautiful layer, 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 because the osteoblast came in, whoom, 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 flat, boom. Okay, so that's how trabeculae remodel. Then you've got woven bone. So where do you get woven bone? Well, you're talking about fracture callus. Where's the Hassan? Show me where you find the woven bone in that fracture callus. Whoa! So top bone. Where's it? In that fracture callus. Where are you going to find your woven bone there? Oh, sorry, I'm messing around. Can you see? Is it coming out? Where's your dot? Okay, yeah, in the middle there. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, that's right. It's throwing down woven bone. Why? Why is it putting down woven bone?
Because it's precursor to them.
Because it can put it down fast. Yeah, it can put it down fast. It can put out woven bone quickly because it doesn't have to organise it. It doesn't have to be put down in la 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 la. It can just go blah and put it down. Okay, you're not done. Press the big button.
Yeah.
What? And again. And again. And again. Sorry, go back. Bottom button. What's this? That's that. What's that? What's this? So I'm buying that there's woven bone in the middle here. I'm buying that. What's this? You've got that. You see that in fractures, don't you? You see that? You see the bone? It got fractured, let's say 2 months ago, and it's got that. The bone kind of gets fatter at the end, doesn't it? What's all that about?
So that's the periosteum there. And
Yeah.
Hematoma that then will start to...
Okay, we'll come to that in a minute. But this guy here, it's periosteum, isn't it? It's periosteum. So that's a totally different way of forming bone, isn't it? You have endochondral ossification, which we're going to talk about in the next talk, going on in the middle. But you also have around the edges, you have periosteal new bone formation. Nice. So, who's got the exam coming up? Anyone? David's with you then. So where in the growth plate are you going to find your woven bone?
You find woven bone...
Do you understand this diagram, or is this like total news to you?
No, I don't. So this is a diagram with different layers of growth plates.
Yep, sure. Describe the story of a chondrocyte.
So the chondrocyte starts off, there are 3 different zones in the growth plate: your reserve, your proliferative.
Okay, so let's start off here. These guys are just sitting there, and then what happens in the proliferative?
So then they start to proliferate, right? So
Yeah. They totally proliferate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the hypertrophic zone, they start
Hang
to
on,
get bigger.
but they also line up, don't they? They line up. Yeah, they line up. So they're all in columns. Yes?
Yeah.
And then they start to
Get bigger.
get bigger. They get fatter and fatter and fatter. And what happens to something that gets fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter? It eventually. Oh, come on. You've ever blown up a kid's balloon? What happens?
Calcifies and then
No, it goes pop, right? Fuck. Jesus, man, stay in the analogy. Okay, yeah, it gets fatter and fatter and fatter. Yeah, until. What happens here?
calcification of the
That's right. It gets fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter, 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 fatter until it like goes, ugh, and it ruptures out all of its good stuff. Yeah, it throws out all of its good stuff. So now what you've got, and you're right, yes, it does calcify around the edge of it, around here. And what that means is he's now like a rigid box, isn't he? He's like a three-sided box, if you like. He's a box without he's a cardboard box without a lid on it, if you like. And now he's opened up, he's ruptured out into the metaphysis of the bone, at which point what can happen? What happens now? Okay, he's ruptured. Blah. Now what? Sorry? It's totally a dead cell. It's dead as dead can be. It's like a cavity. It's like a cave, isn't it? It's just like a dead cave. Now what are you going to do? What's the next thing to happen? What moves into that dead anoxic layer? A blood vessel, right? What do blood vessels love to do? Blood vessels grow into areas which have no blood supply. Yeah, blood vessels like growing into places where there's no oxygen, where it's hypoxic, right? If you're a blood vessel, the place you're going into is a place that hasn't got any blood vessels. That's where you want to go. That's how cancers stay alive, right? They keep growing, growing, growing. They go a bit hypoxic, blood vessels come in. I mean, obviously there's chemical stuff going on as well, but blood vessels love growing into areas that don't have any oxygen. So, in comes the blood vessel, and he brings with him his cell population, yes, of osteoblasts, which come in here and go, shit, we've got a massive cave, let's fill up the cave. What do they fill it up with? Woven bone. Yeah? They fill up the cave with woven bone. That subsequently gets remodeled to lamellar bone. Right, so then osteoclast comes and goes, takes out a massive hole out of there and then fills it up and it goes, converts that woven bone into lamellar bone. Yeah? So it's actually not, it doesn't stay as woven bone for very long in the growth plate. There is a little section where you get woven, but actually the majority of a kid's skeleton is utterly lamellar, if it's not cartilage. Yeah? Or periosteum. So, where in kids do you get osteomyelitis? You know kids get osteomyelitis? Where do they get it? Come on. And where in that diagram do they get it? Go on. Where? Go on. If you're going to guess hard, man. Go on. Just shout it out. Shout it out. Take your trousers and go, la 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 la. Where?
The blood vessel.
Right, okay, yeah. Where is the most hypoxic area of this growth plate? The place where an anaerobic, like a bacteria, would most love to live? Right there. Right there. And that's why kids get osteomyelitis in their metaphyses. It's not even in the metaphyses, it's just on the skeletal side of the growth plate, where it's most hypoxic, where the blood vessels haven't quite grown in yet, where the cells are just ruptured. There is zero oxygen going around. Blood vessels, organisms can get it. That's where they get that. And also, you know, when you have Salter-Harris 2 fractures, where does it rupture? It ruptures, boink, right through here, because that's the weakest point, because it hasn't beefed up yet. Further down, you've got some lamellar bone going on. Further up, it's all cartilage. You don't rupture through cartilage so much because it's quite tough and it's quite resilient. Right there, weak as you like. So that's the weakest point. That's why we always get, when you get Salter-Harris 2 fractures that come across the physis, bang, that's where they go. And why do we not always get growth arrests when kids have physeal injuries? Because you can rupture through there all you like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the resting zone at all. It doesn't affect any of these columns at all. Unless, of course, you have a Salter-Harris 4 or 5 where it's going bang straight through. Then it does. Make sense? Okay. Really glad Manoj wasn't here for that bit, because he would just be squirming in his seat. And of course, you can also get woven bone in tumours, can't you? You can get it in osteogenic tumours, so that's full of woven bone. You get it in Pagets disease, that's what I was after from you. I always say, yeah, well, Mr. Bates, if I had Pagets disease, and you don't know that you don't.
It's the unknown.
Then you might have a bit of woven bone in you. Why has Pagets disease got woven bone? I'll stick with you.
So there's an increased vascularity during these
Why the woven bone? What's the pathology in Pagets? Or like this, there's a perceived pathology.
You're uncoupling of your osteoclast and osteoblast relationship.
Nice, I love that word, uncoupling. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, you're uncoupled. So who's gone crazy? Who's gone crazy in Pagets?
It depends on what phase.
Oh, who goes crazy in it's classed, isn't it? The osteoclasts go bonkers, right? And they just start and they just start ripping up the road. And the osteoblasts are like, oh shit, what are we going to do? And they go into fracture mode because they cannot possibly lay down nicely in layers to keep up with these crazy osteoclasts. That it's literally just like slash and burn. The osteoclasts are digging out the road, what the hell's going on, guys? And so the osteoblasts fill it up as though it's a fracture, and they treat it as though it's, they put down woven bone. And that's why you get those thickened, coarsened trabeculae, because that's the appearance of woven bone being laid down very, very quickly. And it's also the reason why Pagets is quite weak. You know, people with Pagets are susceptible to pathological fractures because the bone doesn't have that nice lamellar structure that resists fatigue fractures coming through it. Pagetic bone is weak, even though it's rock hard. Same is true of osteopetrosis, of course. So, that's microscopic. Blood supply. I'm not going to go crazy about blood supply, but you popped in late. Just tell me about the blood supply to a femur.
So the blood supply to any bone is basically either periosteal blood supply or endosteal blood supply.
Nice.
I would say that
How does do one at a time? Give me endosteal blood supply. How does that happen?
So endosteal blood supply comes in a what's it called? In a centrifugal way, or a centrifugal.
Stop there. How does it get inside the bone?
Through nutrient vessels.
Yeah. Okay. And when I first learned this, I thought it must be like it was total bollocks. Like seriously, there's an artery that goes into a bone. Yeah, it totally is. When I first remember that in medical school, I thought that's got to be a crop, but actually it's true. There's a hole in the bone, and you often see on X-rays, right? That goes into the thing, and then it spreads out, and it goes up and it goes down, and that is your endosteal blood supply, exactly as you say. Yeah. Okay. Great. So, and that produces a high pressure inside the bone, with the bone going, with the pressure going in to out, yeah? Centrifugal, if you like, blood supply, okay? Keep going.
Yes,
Periosteal, where does he get his blood supply from?
So the periosteal gets the blood supply from the neighboring arteries, I would say. From
neighbouring arteries?
Neighboring anastomosis.
Okay, you're just going off beam slightly.
Yeah.
You don't get arteries coming into the periosteum though, where do you see that?
From the muscles.
Ah, boom, you're tipped off, nice, yeah. Right, but this is an important point, right? So the periosteal blood supply gets its blood supply from the muscle attachments, yeah? Muscle attachments are therefore good, that's where it gets its blood supply from. And if you're, why is that relevant?
In vaginal fractures.
Why is it relevant in the context of trauma? You're itching to say something, go ahead.
The less the muscle attachments, the less likely the bone is to heal.
Nice. So if give me an example of a bone that does not have many muscle attachments. Give me an example of a bone that doesn't have any muscle attachments.
Yeah, so talus.
Talus, give me another. Give me another.
The end.
Yeah, I've run out of bones too. Yeah. Scaphoid and talus are nice examples of both that have very, very little in the way of muscle attachments. But also in the context of trauma, if you're stripping blood supply in order to put your plate on, or you have a massive muscle stripping injury at the time of the accident, where it's like and a bone sticking out like there and it's completely denuded of all soft tissue, that has a huge implication for subsequent bone healing. I'm not going to focus too much on this, but, oh sorry, there's one other you missed out. You said endosteal and periosteal, and you were right, but there's one more, isn't there? What's the one more? Metaphyseal. Tell me about metaphyseal.
Periodical nexus.
Right, okay. So you've got blood supplies coming to the metaphysis as well, which is totally separate from your endosteal. And obviously it will anastomose in the middle, but there are different vessels coming in there as they are coming in there. Okay? And there are certain bones where that metaphyseal stuff is pretty freaking critical. Give me an example.
Femoral head.
Femoral head. That's the classic example, isn't it? Where the metaphyseal supply that comes in at the round level of the leather capsule actually is the thing that keeps your femoral head alive day to day. Great. Know your blood supplies. You have a neutral artery, you have periosteal, and you have metaphyseal. And normally, this is the situation, isn't it? The endosteal supply is the high pressure bit, pushing outwards, supplying most of your cortices. And then, but what happens after trauma? If your bone gets, if you get fracture of that bone, what happens? Right, okay, so a transition happens, doesn't it? So you get an upsurge of the periosteal supply. So now it starts going from out to in, which I guess is why we hypothesize intramedullary nailing works, because you ream out the inside of the bone with gay abandon, effectively ruining your endosteal supply. But it seems not to matter, because the body's natural response to trauma is to bring the blood supply from the outside. Again though, makes you understand that the hideous importance of not periosteally stripping your bone too much when you're fixing fractures. Because the endosteal supply isn't the deal breaker here. It's all about periosteal blood supply in the fracture healing situation. Alright? Nice. Okay, we talked about this. I'm not going to bore on about this, but basically the killer vessel is this guy here, the lateral ascending cervical branch of the medial circumflex. That's the guy that goes in at the top and feeds your femoral head. Lateral ascending branch, ascending cervical branch of the medial collateral. Medial circumflex. Scaphoid and talus, again, I'm not going to bore on about, but when going into an exam situation, you look slick if you know those, and you look really lame if you don't know those. Good. Okay, that's macro. This is micro. So we're going down the microscope a bit. And basically, when you're talking about microstructure, you've got two elements. You've got the matrix, which is the gunge, and you've got the cells. That's the alive bit, and that's the dead bit, the organic bit, the inorganic bit, if you like. Well, sorry, the non-living bit. And the matrix, of course, is made up of organic and inorganic elements. So, let's talk about this. Why have I put this picture up here? What's the relevance of the picture? Somebody jumped to the conclusion. There's dudes standing around, like as guys on building sites do, like not looking massively busy, with one guy like lazily like spraying the pipe around. But forget the men. What have you got? What are we looking at there? Say again? Okay, so you're seeing a scaffold. Yeah, okay. Yeah. When you say scaffold, what do you mean? Do you mean the boards around the outside, or are you talking about the rebar in the middle? Right. Okay. So you got scaffold in the middle, and then what's this? Okay. I'll come back to that.
Those bars are akin to the organic collagen.
Okay. So you're saying bars are like the collagen fibres, yeah? And what's the cement like?
It's 100%
Nice, nice. You're following the analogy. I love it. I love it. You're smashing it. What is it? What's the technical term? It's not particularly technical. For a substance, regardless of what it is, it's got two elements to it, two parts to it. One brings in one mechanical characteristic, one brings in another mechanical characteristic, and if you put the two together, they get a combined effect, they get a synergistic effect between the two mechanical things. What's that called?
Hang on.
If it's two metals, yes, but this is not that. Sorry? No, compound is just two different substances coming together. I like the first syllable though. Composite. A composite. A composite material is where you take this one that's good at bending, and this one that's good at not being compressed, and you add them together, and you end up with a material that does not like being compressed, doesn't like being compressed, and it can tolerate a bit of bend. Because if you take a lump of cement, you can stand on that, you can jump up and down there, it's not going to break. But if you take that cement and you put shear on it, try and twist it, or if you try and bend it, cement does not like that at all, and you get fatigue cracks coming through it. But if you stick some rebar through it, bop, 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 so it's now got 8 different bits of iron going through the middle of it, and now you try and twist it, it tolerates it. If you try and bend it, it tolerates it. The fatigue cracks don't go through because they hit a bit of metal, which can say, hey, I can handle this. It's fine. Composite material, one that gains its mechanical stability through 2 different elements being combined. Okay. A composite material. And you're absolutely right, the collagen is part of that. And in my analogy, I've got the steel bars are the collagen. They're the rods. They are the bit that resist fatigue. Okay? They resist fatigue because they're just bits of collagen, they're just wavy bits of protein. They're structural protein. It's quite hard to snap them, they're quite tough. Think of them as bits of nylon. They're not rigid, but they're strong, they're tough. And it's type 1 collagen in bone. And what am I showing you there? This is like some building, God knows where this is, but it's being built. And what do you notice about the collagen fibres? Clues in the title. But except they're not, are they? Like these ones going this way, these ones going this way. They're all orientated very, very, very specifically, aren't they? They're all orientated to the bit that they're designed to support. In other words, they are mechanically aligned to the part of the structure that they are required for. Yeah? And you see that, don't you? You see that in the trabecular bone. You see how the bone patterns itself to the forces going through it. So how do you make that? What am I showing you here? Sorry? A triple helix. What is a triple helix?
3 polypeptide chains wrapped in an identical
Right. Literally, that is all it is. I want to know what a polypeptide. Can you explain what a polypeptide chain is?
Multiple peptides.
Literally, that's all it is. That's it. That's right. And what's a peptide? An amino acid, right? So amino acid, but join on, join on, join on, join on, join on, da 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 da. There's your polypeptide. It's just a sequence of amino acids, nothing more. Is it rigid? No. Could you break it over your knee? Well, no, they're quite bendy. They're like bits of string, aren't they? A polypeptide chain. And what do polypeptide chains, if you make them super long, what do they do? Or, before you answer that, what if I gave you, if I put in some glycine, or I put in some proline or some pyridinolines, what does that make that polypeptide chain want to do?
Straight.
It kind of shrivels up, doesn't it? It kind of like folds in on itself. So when you get globular proteins, these are the ones where here's your polypeptide chain, and this guy gets attracted to this guy. So it goes and wraps itself up. And then this guy wraps itself to there, this guy wraps itself to there, and the polypeptide chain kind of folds itself up into a thing. That's a globular protein. And like we conceptualize that like a ball of like this, didn't it? When we draw those diagrams of reactions going on, you have like these like amorphous blob. That's a globular protein. If the protein polypeptide is structural, it doesn't interact with itself, it interacts with another polypeptide, yeah, which comes in and clicks into it, gadunk, and another one clicks into it, gadunk, and then now you've got three, they go, bah, and they wind themselves up into a polypeptide, into a triple helix. It's not magic, it's just that the bases, the polypeptides along the way, interact with another such that it just fits perfectly together. It's like a magnet, and, and it links and it's does seem a bit like magic, though, doesn't it? But it's quite cool. So literally, it starts off like this. You start off at the top, and you know how the endoplasmic reticulum works. You've got these things. What are these guys here called? These little like a pile of stones. Ribosomes. Boom. You get a ribosome. Ribosome is the point in the cell where it makes its proteins, and the ribosome is a bit like essentially like a ticker tape thing. It's basically it just like arranges polypeptides and polypeptides, and what it has is it's got RNA from the nucleus. The nucleus kicks out RNA, which is basically, here's a template of the protein I want you to make right here. And the ribosome goes, okay, fine. So you want this one, and then this one, and then this one. It basically just copies it and builds it, and it builds multiple copies of it until the nucleus goes, yeah, we don't need more of that. It then gets so it comes out of there. It then gets hydroxylated. At which point, so you get three of them together, it then gets hydroxylated. What the hydroxylation does is it makes them all coil up. So that forms the triple helix, right? So this has already happened inside the cell. Nice triple helix, there it goes. But it's got this bit on the end. What does that do? That pro-collagen, what does that do? What's the point of the pro-collagen? It's really, really important, this.
It binds to the next one?
No. It does ultimately, but there's a point to it. The point of this is it makes it soluble. So it dissolves in water. So this is now soluble, it's in solution, which means the cell can put it inside a vacuole. You know, there's vacuoles inside cells. So you can fill up a vacuole with this pro-collagen stuff, and it can expel it out of the cell. There you go. I put a load of pro-collagen out of the cell. And it didn't have all this collagen clustering up the cell, just dissolved. It dissolves in water, right? But then, it puts out, as you say, a protease. And what does the protease do? Chops off the pro-collagen. It goes from soluble to insoluble. Aha, now we've got a piece of collagen which is now insoluble, so it's now sitting there like, whoa. It's like it's been unmasked all of a sudden. It's now outside the cell, and that's how it externalizes collagen. And then, because it's all covered in bases which want to interact with each other, it's a structural protein, not a globular one. It incorporates itself into fibrils and then ultimately fibers. So you end up, and it's quite cool because when you see a diagram like this, you see where genetic disorders can cause a problem. So if you've got Ehlers-Danlos, which is the COL-A1, basically you have a defect in making collagen type 1. In other words, the RNA's wrong. The RNA has got it wrong. So you're asking the ribosome to make something which is bullshit. Yeah? Bad instructions from the nucleus. That's a genetic disorder. Therefore, none of this works properly and your collagen is shite. If you can't hydroxylate, so the pro-collagen doesn't form properly. The alpha helix just does not put together properly. That's vitamin C, that's scurvy. So you can't make type 1 collagen because it won't build properly inside the cell. And if you've got Ehlers-Danlos, you can't chop off these guys, you haven't got the protease. So the cell puts it out, but it can't then make it insoluble and then start making type 1 collagen. So you end up with half of your collagen doesn't actually happen. So it starts off as a triple helix, and then goes to a microfibril, and it builds and builds and builds and builds until you've got like a massive tendon. And that's collagen. I don't know. No idea. That's myofibroblast. I'll come to that in a minute. I'll explain that in a minute. Even though I don't really know. It all seems rather like magic, doesn't it? It all seems rather like magic, all of this business of like, and then this lines up with that, and it's all along perfectly along lines of force. How the fuck does that happen? How do collagen cells know, how do collagen fibres know that this is the line of force along here, and therefore I'm going to line up along this line of force? How the fuck do they know that? Because once it's outside of the cell, it's like, bleh. It seems awfully like magic. What's your theory? Got a theory?
The way that the chemical conservations.
Yeah, okay, so the fibre orientates, it does, you're right, the fibres do put them, they self-assemble, if you like. They self-assemble, correct. But how does it know which way to point? It could be floating around, it could be like, oh, it's all probably self-assembled. But now look at me, I'm floating around. What direction should I go? The collagen fibre, it has got no brain in it whatsoever. How does it know what the line of force is? Okay. If you imagine SWE was a fibroblast, okay? SWE is sitting on a petri dish. I want you to imagine, there she is, on a petri dish, and she's just like sitting there on the petri dish. She's a fibroblast on her own on a petri dish. I'll start you off easy. What would she do? She would just sit there. She's like, here I am. I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm not in a hurry. I'm sitting here. Now, I want you to imagine I'm going to apply a force, not through SWE, but through the petri dish. I'm going to stretch the agar, stretch it along the line of these chairs here. What does SWE do?
Boss, isn't you mean the Wolff's law?
No. I'm coming to that. But we're right down. Wolff's law is a high-end thing. It's like Wolff's law is a thing you observe on X-rays. We're looking down the microscope at SWE on a petri dish here. Okay, I'm stretching the agar underneath SWE's trousers. Okay, down here, and I'm stretching in this direction. What does SWE do? She's a living fibroblast. Remember? She does this. She loves it. She does that. It's fucking amazing. The cells go, wow, in the line of the force. Cells love a bit of like, they love it. A bit of stretch, and they respond. And they will actually change their phenotype. They will change what they are when you put them under a bit of mechanical tension. So if you take a fibroblast, take this guy up here, he's not doing anything. He's just sitting there, nothing going on. You then put a bit of stretch on him, and he becomes this guy, a proto-myofibroblast. You just stretch that guy, and he starts loving, he starts putting out these fibres, he starts aligning himself along that line of force, and then when you give him a bit of appropriate chemical signaling as well as the mechanicals, he turns into that. In the appropriate chemical milieu, in other words, cytokines, TGFs, like all the growth factors we know about, we know nothing about them, but we know that they exist, and mechanical strain being applied to a cell, they line up along that cell. Where do collagen fibres come from? They come from the membrane, right? So if the membrane's all lined up like this, the collagen fibres all line up like that. Collagen fibres arrange themselves along the cytoplasmic processes of the cells, and that is why they end up lining up far straight along the lines of force. Because the cells, they feel that stretch. They feel the stretch. Wherever it happens to be, that's where the cytoplasm goes. That's where the collagen fibres get laid down. So it isn't magic, turns out. Collagen type 1. Where do you get collagen type 1? Skin.
Bones.
Ligaments. Tendons.
Menisci.
Love it. Skin, you got the lot. Nice. So type 1 is the strong one. It's tough as guts is type 1 collagen. But there's loads of other. Type 2 is one to remember because that's hyaline cartilage. And that's a whole nother lecture that one of the other boys will give you. But hyaline cartilage, which that's the stuff you've got in your knee, in all your joints, etc. That's type 2. And that's collagen. So that is your organic matrix. Those are the fibres. What about the chemicals? I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but you've basically got the organic element. Ignore the cells for a second. You've got proteins. collagen type 1 is obviously the big deal in bone. You've got a bunch of other stuff. One of the things I would bring your attention to is proteoglycans. What are proteoglycans? What's a proteoglycan?
Large molecules that bind.
Are they enlarged or are they fucking enormous? They are absolutely humongous. They're massive, massive molecules. Absolutely humongous molecules. And what's funny about proteoglycans? What have they got on them? It's not so much sugar.
Glycosaminoglycans.
Yeah, glycosaminoglycans are in there. What's the
Anionic acid is the core protein.
yes, okay, but that's made up of proteoglycans. So the proteoglycans are these monster molecules that have lots of sulfate groups upon them, multiple sulfate groups on them, and the sulfate groups do what? They pull in water. They pull in water, and so not so much in bone, but very much in articular cartilage. These sulfate groups are sucking in water because they're molecules that basically will pull in as much water as can be, because they've got all these negative ions all over them, which pull in water. You've got all your growth factors and cytokines, which everyone pretends they understand and no one really understands. And the cells, of course. And that's the organic component. And then, of course, you've got your inorganic component, which is what? Which is cement, in the analogy. Yeah? And it's, as you say, calcium hydroxyapatite. There are other mineral elements within bone that aren't that. There's it's mainly, there's a bit of phosphorus in there, there's a bit of sodium, potassium. So there's other solids going on in bone as well as hydroxyapatite, but hydroxyapatite is by far the biggest player, which is why we always quote it. And you see all sorts of crazy diagrams like this one, which I still don't understand. But basically, the hydroxyapatite gets incorporated into not just around the collagen fibres, but into the collagen fibres. There's actually the collagen fibres arrange themselves with little holes called pores into which the hydroxyapatite can go. So it doesn't just go bathed over the top of them like the cement does. It actually gets inside the collagen fibres and impregnates them, and then goes solid. Yeah, because remember, it starts off as this osteoid stuff, and then the mineral comes into these pores, and slowly it becomes rock solid. And there it is. You can see here are your collagen fibres. Bang, bang, and then you can see these crystals of hydroxyapatite forming literally within, literally around them, between the collagen fibres. They leave a space for them to form. And that's why it's such a cool substance. That's why bone is such a cool substance, because it's got this organic and inorganic elements, which is beautifully exemplified in reinforced concrete, because you've got the element, the tough element that resists shear, which is the iron rebar, or it's the collagen, and you've got the hard, literally weight-bearing area which resists compression, and that is the inorganic component, which in this is cement, and in bone, which is very, very similar, which is calcium hydroxyapatite. They're actually very, very similar substances. There's your matrix. Finally, you've got your cells. And there's only 3 of the buggers: osteoblast, osteoclast, and osteocytes. So, should we start with? Yeah. This is a diagram that's going to come in the next talk. Mesenchymal stem cells. So let's say you're a mesenchymal stem cell. Johnny, you are a mesenchymal stem cell. How do you decide whether you want to become an osteocyte, chondrocyte, myocyte, stromal? Let's leave out myocyte, stromal cell, or like a fibroblast, tenocyte. How do you decide?
The environment that you're in.
Great, your environment. So you're driven by your environment. And what's go on then, give me some environmental factors which will help you decide which of those destinies to follow. Because the thing is, once you've decided you're going to become a pre-osteoblast, you're kind of done. You've shot your load. You can't get back up and then become a chondrocyte. You've shot your bolt. So you're either coming down here, or you're going to have to frizzle off and apoptose. So Make your decision wisely. How do you choose? Environment. Go on, hit me with environment. What in the environment? Sorry?
Cytokines.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, so let's call it chemical environment, shall we? So your chemical environment is your cytokines and your growth factors, etc. What else? One other thing I talked about a little bit earlier on.
Oxygen.
Mechanics. Critical, right? What this dude turns into is massively influenced by mechanics and, of course, the chemical milieu around you. And it's those two elements that decide the destiny of the mesenchymal stem cell. Yeah? Okay. Osteoblasts. Remember, osteoblasts are quite small. They've only got one nucleus, and they like a surface. They like sitting on a surface. They spread out over a surface, and they love it when they get a bit of strain. Get a bit of strain on, they line up with the strain. And therefore, any collagen fibres that get produced out of that osteoblast are going to be lined up along that line of strain. They produce osteoid. They require a surface to sit on. You can't have them floating around. They secrete alkaline phosphatase, so that's a measure of osteoblastic function, alk-phos. Sorry. And of course, you need all this stuff to make them work. So I've made out as though strain is the big deal, and it is, but you've got to have the chemicals right as well. And that's where all this thing about trying to give people BMPs and things to try and stimulate bone healing has come from, where you're trying to throw all of, it's a very crude way of trying to get a fracture to heal by throwing one of the chemical mediators you know works. That's the problem. An osteoblast doesn't have many options in terms of their destiny. So you may be an osteoblast right now, but your destiny is to become one of those three right there. You can either become an osteocyte because you laid down osteoid on top of you and then you mineralized it. And now you're basically locked in. You are locked in and you're not going anywhere. Or you become a bone lining cell. I don't like that term. It's basically periosteum, right? Or you become periosteum, or you become apoptosis. You just die. You become apoptosis. I am apoptosis. That's it. Okay, osteocytes. Now this is the cool bit. If there were a cool bit. So here we go. You've got your osteocytes. These are the dudes who are marooned inside bone, right? They are locked in. They are totally and utterly surrounded by bone. They are not going anywhere. And yet, they've got these little, like, these guys, these canaliculi. What's all that about? What are the canaliculi?
Channels between the...
Yeah, a bit of comms. How do they communicate? How do osteocytes communicate with each other? Go on, throw some, go on, go crazy. If I was holding your hand, I'm one, you're the other, how would we communicate? How do cells communicate? Via...
Cytoplasm?
It rhymes with strap functions.
Gap junction.
Gap junctions. Come on, man. Cells communicate via gap junctions, don't they? And that's how canaliculi, and that's how... So a canaliculi is just a hole in the bone, right? But inside the canaliculi are cytoplasmic processes where the osteoblasts communicate through little things. So when you stand off cortical bone, yeah, and you've got these osteons here, each one of these little black dots is one of those dudes, one of those little guys there, and he's sending off these little cytoplasmic processes through the canaliculi, yeah. So here's an osteon. We're taking a wedge out of an osteon, right? And you've got your blood vessel in the middle there, and you've got this dude out here. Where's he getting his blood supply from? Where's he getting his blood supply? Where's that guy getting his blood supply from? How the fuck how does he stay alive? He's alive.
From the endosteal supply.
Oh, from over here?
This is the periosteum.
No, this is called a cement line. Ain't nothing going through that. This is the outside of the cutting.
Central canal.
From the central canal. Oh, how is that possible? Because this guy ultimately has cytoplasmic processes that link either through gap junctions or directly all the way to the middle. That guy is getting all his blood supply from over there, and he does it through cytoplasmic processes that are slowly oxygenating and moving nutrients out to the peripheries. Like magic, right? That's why you can't have more than 7 or 8 like layers to a version canal. That's why you can't have a mega one, like one massive one going all up down your femur, because all the osteocytes on the outside would die. You can only have the layer, the sort of distance of osteons, the amount of layers that will allow the guys on the outside to stay alive. How does that guy grow his membranous processes all the way out to the middle? How did that happen? How does that guy get to have nutrition from there? Remember how it got built in the first place?
Pores that were there when the osteoblast turned into osteoid, it had pores.
Right, that's right. The osteoblast had some control over his destiny. He put out remember when it was building, and he was the outside layer, right? He was the outside layer, and he put out the osteoid, he covered himself in it, and he stuck a few like arms out, like that. He stuck about 10 or 12 arms out through the osteoid, and then he mineralized it. Yeah? So now, he's locked in, but he's got all these arms out. And then the next guy comes in over the top, and he goes, oh yeah, I can feel him. Oh yeah, he's feeling the love, because he's now found a friend. And then so now he's got a friend, and then that guy goes, aha, yeah, I can feel the osteocyte behind me, I've got a call, he's like, oh, he's getting the good feeling. And then he locks himself in, but he's got, and so he goes into the middle. I'm stretching this analogy. Osteoclasts. Remember, the massive, osteoclasts are massive, right? So osteoblast is you, osteoclast is like from here to here. 150 microns is the size of an osteoclast. Remember that number. So, osteoclast here, give me some features of an osteoclast. You can read them off the board if you like.
Multinucleated.
Yes! What does hematopoietic mean? Say again? Like fuck you can. Once you're an osteoclast, you're an osteoclast. You can't change anything else. What does hematopoietic mean? We were looking at mesenchymal earlier on, weren't we? Right. He's not in that mesenchymal stem cell like triangle, is he? He's in the next one over, which is you get like your mesenchymal stem cells here, and then you have your hematopoietic stem cell here, and then your pluripotent stem cell, like your embryonic one, right at the top, who's basically God. He can create any cell he likes, brain or anything. But mesenchymal's over here, which is soft tissues, and hematopoietic blood is over here, and he's of that lineage, isn't he, like a macrophage? Yeah, and he's multinucleate, and he's got a brush border, his wobbly brush border, and how does he stick himself to bone at the edges? How does he stick himself on here and over there?
Integrins.
Huh?
The integrins.
Integrins, exactly right. Integrins, those are adhesion molecules, they stick you onto the side. And what substance does he use to break down the mineral in bone? Because there are 2 elements. Huh?
Cathepsin.
No, you didn't listen to the question, you just blurted it out. Well, I'm just going down the order, I just got to read out the next one on the list.
Carbonic anhydrase.
Right, okay, so no, carbonic anhydrase is an enzyme which generates hydrogen ions, isn't it? Yeah, so it generates acid. So how does it break down the mineral element, the cement? It produces acid using carbonic anhydrase. Yeah, okay? And it's also got proteolytic enzymes, an example of which is cathepsin K. That's right, which is a proteolytic enzyme. So basically, that breaks down the cement, that breaks down the collagen. Yeah, you've got to have a separate gig for the 2 elements of bone, one for the inorganic, one for the organic. And a measure of their activity is acid phosphatase. So alk phos is osteoblasts, acid phosphatase, because they need acid to break it down, is osteoclasts. Okay, there he is. Isn't he beautiful? He's massive, right? He's a monster. How big's an osteoblast? Probably about, like this. And he does the cutting cones, and the cutting cone is the unit that leads to an osteon, as we said. I don't thrash that anymore. And in trabecular bone, he's producing a Howship's lacunae, and that is the functional unit of trabecular bone. There's this thing called linkage, which you were telling us about, Dave. Do you want to take us back to you? Tell me about linkage.
So there's an interplay between your bone.
Just explain that diagram to me.
Green, blue, and red.
Okay, I'll go easy. Explain that diagram to me.
So your osteoblast and osteoclast are linked in the sense that you use.
Okay, so osteoblast here, osteoclast is here. Yeah.
Yeah, you communicate using rank and rank ligand.
Yeah.
Which is rank ligand is one that's produced by the osteoblasts.
Yeah.
That activates the osteoclast rank receptor.
Yeah. Which then causes him to.
Will activate, increases upregulates the brush border and the production of.
Well, actually, he's actually a pre-osteoclast, isn't he? So it makes him make more osteoclasts. He's actually slightly further up the tree, so he can like he can reproduce, can't he? And produce tons of those guys. Yeah, and they're going for it by now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about OPG. What is OPG?
It's a cytoplasmic binder of rank ligand that stops the activation. It takes up the rank,
Osteoprotegrin, yeah?
yeah, it takes up the rank ligand in the cytoplasm so that you can't activate
It's
the
just a
rank.
capacitive inhibitor.
Yeah. That's
Here
all.
it is. It's just a capacitive inhibitor that binds the rank ligand, or rank L, that binds the rank L so he can't go onto rank. Simple. And that down. And where does he come from? Where does OPG come from? It comes from the osteoblast itself. So it's the osteoblast way of turning itself off, isn't it? Or turning off the osteoclast. Because this rank L is being expressed all the time. So his way of moderating the whole process is to put out OPG, and that turns off the osteoclast, osteoprotegrin. Okay. There are some other mechanisms. Start with back. Go on. Pick out one of those. We've got this one here is the rank L osteoprotegrin system here. There's rank comes off the osteoclast, rank L comes off the osteoblast, and OPG blocks the rank L. Okay, that's that one. Why don't you give me a start easy? What about this guy over here? What is this dude here? CTR. R stands for receptor. CT receptor on the osteoclast. Anyone have a guess? Calcitonin. Boom. Come on, if you're going to guess hard. Don't whisper. Don't whisper. Calcitonin receptor. What does calcitonin do to an osteoclast? It inhibits. Yeah, guess hard. Okay? Calcitonin inhibits osteoclast directly. There's a calcitonin receptor on an osteoclast and it inhibits it. Okay, next one. What is... wrong button. What's this here? Cathepsin K, exactly. Cathepsin K, and he's the enzyme for this. Okay, great. All right. What's this dude here? ER, alpha. Estrogen receptor. Now, who got that? Oh man, smashed it. Estrogen receptor. Estrogens have a strongly positive effect on. They have estrogen receptors on both sides, on the osteoclastic and on the osteoblastic sides. Estrogens and indeed testosterone are very good because testosterone gets converted to estrogen in the cell. Has a strongly positive effect on bone mass in general. Okay, getting a bit more specialist now. Let's go down here. What is this? Abdullah, come on, hit me. Sclerostin. Steve, sclerostin.
I fell asleep during you talk about it.
Anyone hit me? So sclerostin is in the bone, and it's produced by the osteocytes. The osteocytes, which are marooned in the bone, produce sclerostin, and that has a negative effect on osteoblasts. So sclerostin in the bone has a negative, as it gets released, as the osteoclasts start chewing out, it's a negative effect on the osteoblasts coming in. There's this thing called a Wnt protein, which activates a receptor on the osteoblast as well. Wnt is strongly positive for osteoblasts. So Wnt is positive, that's a protein produced when you're during regeneration, and sclerostin is inhibitory to that receptor. Wnt is positive, sclerostin is negative. Okay, so that's the basics, the real basics of what's going on inside that linkage, or what do you call it? Coupling of the two cells. They are intrinsically linked with each other. And they have to be, otherwise you get, if one is going faster than the other, then you'll get either a net increase in bone or a net decrease in bone. Okay, almost done. Pathological states. So tumours, what happens in a tumour? When you know how you have pathological lesions, so you have like you know, you've got breast cancer and you've got a massive hole in your femur. How is that caused? I thought it was the tumour. Is it not the tumour breaking down the bone? No, come on, man, stick to your guns. No, it's totally the fucking osteoclast. I think that's what we think. Because we tell people, oh, you see, the cancer is eating away. The cancer is not eating away at your bones. The cancer doesn't give a fuck about your bones. The cancer is activating the osteoclast, exactly as you said. First time, you shouldn't have backed down. Yeah, it's osteoclast breaking down the bone. And that's why some tumours respond to bisphosphonates, because it just shuts down the osteoclast. Other pathological, that's just osteoporosis. That's Pagets, where you get loss of linkage. Osteoporosis is a loss of linkage or coupling. And what's that guy? Sorry? Beaking, yeah, that's right, yeah. Why is it beaking? Why were you getting beaking before this broke? I just told you earlier on. Osteoblast in the what? Rhymes with sclerocrostium. Right. Right. The periosteum was crying out for the periosteum was feeling the strain. Shit, we got a fracture here, right? The periosteum knew there was a fracture coming. It knows there's a fracture coming. So the periosteum is going for it, but the osteoclasts won't help. They won't help. They won't remodel that area of bone because they've been shut down by bisphosphonates. So there's a stress fracture which you can't see yet, going da 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 across here, and the periosteum is trying to repair it, but ineffectively because it's only that's all the periosteum can do is make a bump on the outside. It cannot stop a crack going all the way across. So the periosteum is responding, nothing else is. The osteoclasts have been shut down. So these are stress fractures, aren't they? And that's linkage. And there's finally got ossification. You've got intramembranous ossification and endochondral ossification. What's the difference? What's the difference in endochondral and intramembranous ossification?
So intramembranous ossification happens in the skull and the clavicle, isn't it? So
yes.
It lays down and layer upon layer upon layer.
Great. And therefore you're going what? Directly to the lamellar bone. Yeah? You're not going through a cartilage middleman, whereas endochondral is what?
So it's when you have a fracture, that's why it's callus.
It's callus, yeah. Exactly. So you're getting callus being laid down, and so you go through a cartilage middleman, yeah? You go through fibrocartilage before you get to bone. So intramembranous, classically it happens in the skull and the clavicle, but it also happens in the periosteum as well. That is where you're just laying down bone directly. And remember, in the periosteum, here's the bone, here's the muscle attachment from which it gets its blood supply. Yep. You've got this cambial layer, or this like cellular layer. So when you have a fracture and you get new periosteal new bone growth, that's where it comes from. That cellular layer. And then you've got this fibrous layer on the top, which is like a sort of capsule on the top. In what age group is that relevant? Massively relevant.
In pediatrics?
Boom! It's pediatrics. In kids, how thick is that periosteum?
It's very thick.
Oh, it's like this, right? It's massively thick. There's huge potential for bone healing in the periosteum of children. Yeah. And that's why kids' fractures heal faster than ours. Not only have they got like, shed loads of like, mesenchymal stem cells all hanging around with nothing to do. But they've got a thick periosteum, so kids get instant bone. It doesn't have to go through a cartilage middleman because they've got so much periosteum, they can go almost immediately to bone in that periosteal layer. Obviously, that doesn't heal the whole fracture, but it doesn't have to. It can stabilise it, so kids heal much quicker than grown-ups by virtue of that. And they remodel faster because the remodelling comes from the periosteum as well. Then you've got endochondra, of course, which is where, we see this process coming across here. This is a rat's femur, obviously, but you've all been in a paediatric fracture clinic where you see people break their wrist, and the kids break their wrist, and you go, oh yes, Mrs. Miggins, you can see little Johnny's new bone forming. And they go, oh yes, it's a new bone forming. It's obviously not new bone at all, it's calcified fibrocartilage at that stage, isn't it? It's not actually new bone. The woven bone hasn't kicked in yet, it's still calcified fibrocartilage.
Mr. Miggins wouldn't understand that.
No, exactly. It's like, oh, you see the calcified fibrocartilage coming in really nicely there. Yeah, it just doesn't have the same ring, does it? So in summary, bone has matrix constituents. What are the matrix constituents again? Remind me. Yeah. Your matrix constituents are going to be organic and inorganic. Yep, great. It's got a structure to it, hasn't it? And the structure of cortical bone and cancellous bone is very different. One has osteons, one does not have osteons. Anatomy and blood supply of the bone. It's really important. I mean, you answered it very nicely. It's got a nutrient, endosteal. It's got a periosteal. Periosteal gets it from the muscle attachments. Endosteal is a nutrient artery. And you also have metaphyseal vessels, which are very, very important in certain bones which have awkward articulations to make, one of which is the femoral head. You've got control mechanisms, linkage between osteoblasts and osteoclasts, and when that linkage is lost, for example, in osteoporosis, Pagets tumours, that's when you get a problem with bone, and those are your pathological states. It's 4:20. I can see Prim looking at his watch vehemently. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
I have that in film on the screen.
Make the boring subject very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
What about, everyone came for driverless cars.
Is that next?
That's the next talk.
What was the drive?